All right. We are live. We are live. Oh, the transcript. That's irritating. Okay, turn that off. Okay, I'm using Kim's laptop. But my name is Adam Hems. My day job is as a cloud architect for Microsoft, and I have a number of hobbies. Scuba diving is one of them. We can talk about that if you'd like, but probably not. You're probably not here to talk for me to talk about that. One of my actually favorite hobbies is this user group, which I have had the pleasure of leading since 2005 now. When I joined it, I think in the two teens of something or other, I forget. It was a little quiet, and the most recent event seemed to have been going down a brewery, and it had been like 8 months, and I was like, and I pinged the leader and said, you guys going to meet again, do some Azure stuff because it's cool. And the leader said, oh yeah, I moved to Florida, so yeah, not so much. I said, and he's like, you want to take it over? I said, oh yeah. So he said, oh fine, yeah, you're the leader, I'm out. So okay, so I've been building it up. First of all, in the old Microsoft office, we've done some events downtown a couple of times, but this seems to be the favorite. And the last 2 years, it's been virtual, but now we're back in person. Woo-hoo! Yeah. Some of you still virtual, and you're welcome. Not something I used to do before COVID. It was like all 100% in person or not at all. So we're sticking with the virtual to support those folks who wish to be. Also facilitates recording it as well. So welcome the virtual folks. We're going to stick with this because we can see there's some folks here who value it, which is fine. This is good, so support both. In fact, we get folks from elsewhere in Houston. This is the Houston Azure user group because part of the ethos here is really to learn from one another, right? Because we all have different backgrounds and experiences, different industries. Some of us work in software companies like James, others in finance companies. He's gone. He's standing over there. The IRS, Tin is with ISV or a partner. Infosys, for example. So we get to different experiences for that. So. Ian's with Weatherford, representing oil and gas in the town, which is common. We get a lot of folks actually from oil and gas companies coming in. We've had folks from Chevron and Halliburton and Chevron show up quite a bit. So representing one of our biggest industries in town. We also get a lot of healthcare folks actually coming out. We see that quite a bit. And also some state and local government. We've had some of that as well, because it's different needs, with different things going on. It's a big town, a lot of stuff going on, but a common use case for like this whole set of technology enables so much, right? Small companies, small software companies, partners, and big industries, big companies. It's a journey for each of us. So by all coming, there's not really any other mechanism that we have. That there is, whereby folks who share use of a technology like Azure, which is now colossal, where we can actually meet one another and learn from one another, or just meet one another as well. In the past, I've encouraged folks who are looking to change roles to come into this world. I've heard folks who are like, well, here, this cloud thing is a big deal, and I've been stuck in a rut doing something else, maybe something IT related, maybe not. I'm here to learn. Maybe there's some opportunities, and the answer to that is yes. Yes, there are. There's lots. So recruiters have come here too. I encourage recruiters actually to post job openings on the discussion of the main board. So we've helped facilitate that. And we've seen folks change jobs and learn and grow over the years, which has been very rewarding. So that's been good about learning. So what we're not here to do is sales pitch. So if you're here to receive a sales pitch and maybe do an evaluation, want to know how much stuff costs, can you get a deal? Wrong place. No, that's not what it's about. It's just here about to learn from the speakers, and we've had speakers often from Microsoft, but also from members of the community as well, which personally some of my favorite presentations have been. So welcome, guys. Welcome. Yeah, welcome. More folks coming in for those of you online.
Can you get us into the Wi-Fi?
No, I can't. I didn't. Because I failed to set one up. Sorry. I can do one in a minute if you would like.
Okay.
But I don't have one just yet. I forgot. Yeah, I forgot. So that's what we're about. Yeah, I'm really glad you guys could come out and yeah, learn from one another. Our topic tonight is one that has a lot of customers or folks, teams I've worked with. I've been working with Azure since I was at the launch in 2010, when it was tiny and didn't even have virtual machines at all. I don't know if anyone, yeah, can you imagine that? A lot of folks, when I say that, it didn't actually have virtual machines when it launched at all. It had only platform as a service. Yeah, you couldn't actually stand them up. If you wanted that, you couldn't have it. Well, it didn't exist. Virtual machines came out in 2011. So a topic of our conversation today is actually how we use Windows clients in Azure. There's lots of options as well as server. Lots of technology some technology, in fact, has come and gone. Azure's been around for so long that some of the earlier ways of actually deploying desktops. I actually used them myself in Landmark here in town to deploy and actually use them to deploy engineering applications for oil and gas for students at the U of H, and a technology that is gone now. It was used and deleted. That's how long Azure has been evolving for, right? So what we're going to talk about today is the current ways that we can use to talk about desktops as a service. So without further ado, let me bring up our speaker, Kim. Would you mind coming up? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Kim Vadi. I'm a solution architect at Microsoft, and my normal hobby is I love fishing, jogging, running, mountain biking with the kids and my hubby. I believe he's here on the audience tonight. Thank you so much for being here with us. I hope that I can learn from you guys, as well as provide some useful content to your day and your workplace that is applicable to your. So
Kim, don't forget to share your PowerPoint.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
We can sit in the room, but
Sure.
It wasn't sharing.
Am I not sharing? Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It was deliberate because it just had my camera up.
Sure, I'm just going to do this and then.
Probably screen two, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you guys see okay on Teams?
Yes, we can see it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much. 1 second. Let me switch slide. So last week I have found myself at a milestone of completing 1,865 miles of running, walking last year. And all of that metrics is all possible through an app, so, an exercise app that many of us probably have a favorite of. Mine is Map My Run. So one of the great benefit with having an app is that you have the support group, the community behind it, and the challenges that keep me personally going. I have running buddies, and that motivate me to come out. I have to be honest truth that there are days that I didn't want it to be out going out and exercising. It's cold, it's dark, it's just gloomy. But sorry, let me move this side. But because of the community and the support group, I motivate me to get out there at 4 o'clock in the morning, Memorial Park, and eventually crawl home to the finish line anyway. So I like to cite in the great word of Martin Luther King, if you cannot fly, what would you do? You run. If you cannot run, what would you do? You walk. And if you cannot walk, you crawl, right? So by all means, keep moving. What happens when you stop? You're not going anywhere. So the motivation that I got is being a part of the community, and I have the tool, the technology that would help me my day-to-day struggles. So along with Microsoft mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So I do appreciate and thank you for being here with us tonight with the Houston Azure user group, and allow me to share my knowledge and learn from you as well. So the fact that you're here tonight with us or online with us virtually, you are already part of the community. You have taken your first step, walk into the community and Azure community with us and explore how Microsoft empower different organizations to achieve more with the best technology, the tool, and the support user group. So if you would allow me to walk with you into AVD tonight, we will run with AVD at the end of the night as one group. So without further delay, I'd like to get ahead and start it into the desktop hosting desktop, in this case, Azure, virtual desktop in Azure. So this is our agenda for tonight. A very quick glance of the different of what's VDI, AVD, and desktop as a service, benefit use case. We will have a demo in a little bit, and some tips and tricks and best practices, and then a Q&A at the end. I will try to answer all your questions in my best possibility possible. But if I don't know, I would like to take down the questions and get. I promise I will get back to you. So, when is virtualization useful to? When do we use virtualization? So virtualization helps the organization to address specific operational needs, such as keeping the data and organizational resources safe while enabling appropriate access by a variety of users. So access to IT services on demand for an increasing elastic workforce, merger acquisition, or short-term employee contractors and partner virtualizations are useful. And supporting different workload, like for instance, legacy apps, software development and testing, designing and engineering. So these are the cases when virtualization are very useful. So during COVID and post-COVID, it is critical for companies to adjust its business strategy and technologies to enable remote work capabilities for their team while enhancing security, reducing infrastructure costs, and simplifying IT management. What Microsoft does is Microsoft empower IT to transform the workplace through desktop as a service. It's a product that provides instant business agility, flexibility for companies to quickly adapt to fluctuating the mobile workforce located around the globe in this world. Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 is one of those services that Microsoft provides for desktop. They are available in Azure. So in the interest of tonight's session, interest of time for tonight's session, I will be focusing on AVD, not the Windows 365, but I will have a comparison. When do you use those two services? What's good for your organization? And VDI, the concept of VDI is not new to many of us. So can I have a volunteer in the audience, if I may, if you're going to share with us in regarding to your organization? Do you guys use any AVDs or VDIs in your organization? your company at the time? Today? Anybody? If not, it's okay. Citrix VDI on-prem, yes. Thank you.
All websites like that.
Okay. Thank you very much for the participation. So normally VDI is deployed in in a data center, right, and managed by IT department. Typically on-premises provider, including Citrix, VMware, and remote desktop service, or in the cloud. So some of the organization use the cloud to scale the virtual desktop environment, enabling the hybrid capability that allow IT admin to meet the changing, demanding, fluctuating, demanding organizational need. AVD is a service that Azure offer for this virtualization, and it's available worldwide. So for user, what is in it for the user? For the user, you will get the full Windows 10 enterprise experience, including Edge, Cortana, a familiar Office 365 Pro Plus user experience with multi-session, and GPU acceleration for encoding a video to provide improved responsiveness and smooth video playback. And user can also access built-in or attached camera with remote applications or remote desktop with new and legacy window application. But what about for the IT administrator and the team? So the multi-session Windows 10 available for Windows Virtual Desktop at the efficiency and ease of management for device and everyday apps. And to reduce the cost by supporting up to 4 times as many users compared to Windows 10 Enterprise single sessions. And to simplify management on Azure with a single image for both single session or multi-user session. So we talk about AVD. What's so special about AVD? App streaming is one of the features that that the AVD provide. So AVD is a desktop and an app virtualization service that run on the cloud and lets you access your remote desktop anytime, anywhere, right? However, did you know that you can also use Azure Virtual Desktop as a platform as a service? So what does that mean? It provide your organization's apps as a software, as a SaaS to your customers. Like for instance, we'll have a demo later on. So instead of sharing the entire desktop or issuing laptop to user, you can stream just a specific apps to your user, and you minimize a lot of risk security through the app streaming. So you deliver the app to your customer over a secure network through virtual machine. What are some of the benefit? Why AVD? The number one thing is no waiting, right? With the chip shortages and shipping delay these days, it taken weeks or months to get the chips or the laptop or supply to the new business like laptop that you need. So as we mentioned, we can with AVD you can be up and running in minutes, 15 minutes for that matter. And another thing is no big investment. You don't have to spend anything upfront. By using the DaaS model to change the expense from a CapEx to an OpEx. And this allows for better cost control and avoid making investment in equipment that you may not use or need at all. More flexibility, right? So during the period of high growth or high turnover of employee, you can easily and quickly scale your AVD to match your needs. And you're also not tied to one machine. You can access your virtual machine desktop from anywhere with an internet connection. And talking about security, it enables remote work anywhere in the world, right? So instead of purchasing a laptop for your remote and hybrid worker, you can leverage AVD instantly within minutes. Employee can access it from their home computer, office desktop, or from anywhere else in the world. So with an AVD, even if someone outside of your company uses computer, they have no access to your business network. It is much more secure because it forces authentication on log into the virtual desktop. So how does AVD, I'm sorry, this doesn't show up what
Are
happened.
you taking questions now?
I would prefer at the end, if you would, I would appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Bill. Let me see. Yeah, that's a lot of right slice.
Right, Kim?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So how does AVD work? What Microsoft manages and what are you responsible for? So typically, the control plane of AVD is Microsoft managed, right? So what Microsoft manages is what? The web client, the diagnostic, which is an event-based aggregator services that provide through Azure Virtual Desktop management plane that mark each user or each user deployment as success or failure. And the administrator can query the aggregation of the event to identify failing component. And the management playing with that, the broker. The connection broker are the services that manage user to connect to the virtual desktop or remote apps. And this broker also handling load balancing and reconnecting to existing session, right? The gateway. But what about the customer? What is the customer managed and responsible for? The desktop, the apps, the images that the golden images that your organizations approve of or have certain configurations and requirement on it, and the profile management. So each of the user have their own profile, right, attached to it. In terms of sizing and scaling, is the customer managing, and the networking policy, your VNet, you're responsible for the networking policy, right? And express route, user management identity. Those are some of the things that the customer is responsible for. So let us quickly run through the shared responsibility. This is pretty self-explanatory. As with many other cloud services, there are shared set of security responsibility. You have control and flexibility, and with that come responsibility. So if you are adopting Azure Virtual Desktop, it is important to understand that some of the components come already secure on Azure for your environment. And other area that you need to configure to fit your organization security needs. So AVD, you do have to have, knowledge of Azure to administer it and to get it, to deploy it. It's not a complete managed service. So this is the AVD network baseline. If you take a look at it, the application endpoint are in the customer on-premise network. The express route extend the on-premises network into Azure Cloud. And Azure AD Connect integrate with the customer Active Directory domain service with Azure Active Directory. Azure Virtual Desktop Control Plane handle the web access, the gateway, broker, diagnostic, and the extensibility component like REST API. The customer manages the AD domain service and Azure AD and Azure subscription. The VNet, Azure File Share, Azure NetApp File, and the Azure Virtual Desktop host, pool, and workspaces. We'll go into the terminology of AVD in a little bit. And to increase the capacity, the customer uses more than one Azure subscription in a hub and spoke architecture to connect them via virtual network peering. So at a high level, you can connect to your on-premises resource via Express Route or VPN. And the user is authenticated using Azure AD identities. AVD also integrated with System Center and Configuration Manager, as well as Microsoft Intune. The support device running on Windows operating system with Linux, thin client SDK, and other tool. So this is a very high level baseline of the AVD network. And this picture, you can get it from the AVD Accelerator, with I will share the link at the end.
Get that? I don't want to spend more time on that one. Bit of an eye chart.
It's a busy
Yeah.
chart.
Yeah, that might be a good time for questions. Good. Thanks, Kim.
Sure. This is the Azure network connection. It's going to be a little bit of a talk here, so just bear with me. I'm trying to be brief here, but what you're looking at is the client connection sequence of AVD. So there are a series of steps, but AVD using the reverse connection transport. What does it mean? It means that it's using a reverse connect transport for establishing the remote session and for carrying RDP traffic. So unlike the on-premises remote desktop services deployment, the reverse connect doesn't use TCP listener to receive incoming traffic RDP connection. Instead, it's using an outbound connectivity from Azure Virtual Desktop infrastructure over HTTPS connection. So let us kind of trace through this a little bit. So using AVD, the client user subscribe to the Azure Virtual Desktop Workspace. And I know what is a workspace, right? I will go over that in a little bit in a different slide. But Azure AD authenticate the user and then return a token to enumerate resources and available to the user, right? And then the client actually passes the token to the Azure Virtual Desktop feed subscription services. And then that services actually validated the token. And then the services then pass a list of available desktop that are available in the workspace and remote apps back to the client in the form of a signed connection configuration. And then the client store the connection configuration for each of the available resource in a set of an RDP file. So when a user selects the resource to connect, the client uses an associate RDP file and it establishes a secure TLS connection to the closest Azure Virtual Desktop Gateway instances that are closest to them, right? And then passes the connection information. AVD Gateway validates the request and asks the AVD broker to orchestrate the connection. This is all confusing, and if you need me to stop, let me know. But the AVD broker then identify the session host and use the previously persistent communication channel to initiate the connection. And then the remote stack initiates a TLS, the connection to the same AVD gateway instance that is used by the client. So after both the client and session host are connected to the gateway started relaying the raw data between both endpoints. This established the base reverse connection transport for the RDP. So after the base transport is set, the client start the RDP handshakes. That's how the connection is established. So if you just, I know I talk a lot, but do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, so you do the authentication first. Right, remember,
That's correct, yes.
so we do the authentication first. Then we go to the gateway, and the gateway goes to the broker.
Yes,
And then once we have that established with the broker, it looks for the session host. My session host says we have something available, and it goes, so then broker takes over the connection with the gateway, and then they initiate the data transfer. Is it something like that, or am I missing?
you're missing the token.
Oh, so,
The AD issue a token
Okay.
for the client.
Okay.
And then the client then pass the token to AVD feed services.
Okay.
Right. So it's a little convoluted.
What again? I'm just trying to make sure I understand, sorry.
I think the feed services, its job is to validate the token
Okay,
before it can give it to the broker, AVD
Okay.
broker.
okay, got it.
It's kind of like an attribute.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, can I not just do this with a virtual machine? Why shouldn't I just stand up a virtual machine with a public IP? Why do I need all this other stuff?
A VM is great, a virtual machine with a public IP. Clearly your traffic is not secure. It going through you traverse the internet, right? AVD, that's a great question, Adam. I gotta think about that.
And that would be a little bit. So you're using Azure AD here, right? A little bit, and you're right about it hiding off of the public internet, right? So if we're using AVD, we've got specific clients that we can use to help us a little bit. The other thing is different images for our session hosts. Right?
Correct.
Multiple session hosts. So if I've got one VM, then I have to have lots of users all stacked up on top of it, right? Figure that out and manage it. And what happens if the VM dies? Then everyone has a bad day, right? Where the session host will have multiple of those things, they're all the same, and something else figures out, which in this case is the RD broker, which of those fully functioning up and running virtual machines my users go to. So it solves a lot of scale issues that I would have to do myself if I were using this virtual machine.
Absolutely.
Directly connected with virtual machine. Yeah, that's right. You can still do that. You can set up a virtual machine if you want. Don't do that, but you could. Right?
Yeah, and in this case, I mean, if you have multi-session, you save on costs as well.
So this is more efficient, and that's the purpose of all of this stuff, so that you don't have to do all this management of the virtual machine. So you can scale them out to like thousands of users if you're enterprises, which enterprises have this with thousands of users on, or if you need like 2 users, then
Yeah, plus it offloads the auth story to Azure. Now it's your problem because I go there and you authenticate me on behalf of instead of me passing my credentials directly into.
Correct.
Right, and then having to deal with, yeah, that's right.
Like I'd much rather say get access token from databases.windows.net.
Correct.
Using a SQL login.
Or in this case, Key Vault if you have an apps.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Right.
Much more secure solution. Those VMs are nicely protected by authentication and, like you say, Azure Active Directory, and they're not on the public internet.
Yeah, y'all got thousands of security engineers. I got Steve. You know. Actually,
Cool.
don't talk
Oh,
about that.
great question. Great discussion, guys.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely. So with AVD, AVD support MSIX. Is anybody familiar or used MSIX previously?
It was a big night when they were rolling it out. They were in packages.
Okay, okay. You're right, absolutely right. It is a window app package tool. And it's enabled the enterprise to stay current with to ensure that the application are always up to date and packaged the way they wanted it. So previously we talked about remote app streaming. So MSIX allow for you to package your custom application and then attach or upload it to AVD and then stream it out. So instead of giving the entire desktop or the entire laptop, you can stream that particular app. You package it up and you attach the AVD and you just stream it out to user. It's more secure that way. You only expose what you needed to share instead of everything. All right. Oops, sorry. I went too far. Sorry. Okay. So in this case, and you connect only the app that when user log on, and FX Logic storage. Is anyone familiar with that? It's for roaming profile. Thank you. Yeah. So the apps are made available on a user basis, right? And then you deliver the app dynamically to session host VM. So no, you simplify the application management and the golden images you got. You just simplify that. All right, let's move on. So with AVD, the deployment with Azure File, the FS Logics acts as your file share. You can use data disk with Azure, and this is a resilient and will have the same service level agreement that Azure provide for other resources. VM with FS Logic profile and Azure files. You wanted to make the solution even easier and integrate it into the services that Azure have to offer. With the Azure file, you no longer needed to need the VM with disk in order to have file share. Instead, you can connect to Azure file and put all the profile data over there. Okay, what happened? My slide's not moving, sorry. There you go. That was meant for the others, this slide that you don't have to have. Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. So what this is saying is that with Azure File, you no longer needed the VM with disk. So previously we see the data disk onto your to your left, right? And with Azure File and FX Logic File, you do not need that at all. And because all the profile data is in the file share or FX Logic Azure File. Now, sorry, why is this not moving? My slice is messed up. Sorry. Okay. So with AVD deployment usage with Azure NetApp file, it is simple to manage because Azure NetApp file is built to consume Azure native platform services with the power of data on tap reliability feature. And this enables the customer to quickly and reliably provision the enterprise grade SMB volume to your AVD environment, or previously known as Windows WVD, right? And it's provide enterprise level performance compared to Azure File. So if you want to do a POC or a small use case, I would go with Azure File. But for an enterprise use, I would go with the Azure NetApp file because it has all the bells and whistles for the enterprise grade needs, like high I/O and low latency shared storage, the performance necessary for the highest demand for the enterprise workload like ERP, SAP HANA, and your AVD environment. Lower costs, and as a it costs lower. Because targeting the most demanding and mission critical application and workload with key requirement that typically require advanced data management capabilities. So the on-tap capability on this space, things like efficient snapshot and cloning, on-demand capacity of performance scaling, efficiency of replications, Azure NetApp file is better in that regard. And all of this is delivered as a native Azure native PaaS service. So I just don't want to read to you what's on the screen already. So I'm going to move on to a different slide. But the key takeaway idea is enterprise grade, use NetApps, Azure NetApps. So what is the prerequisite if you were to use virtual desktop? Clearly, licensing wise, you gotta have license, right? Check your licensing eligibility. You have to have an Azure subscription, so VNet, a file share, a domain, AD domain with an Azure AD tenants, right? And also you have to have a user account and service account that can join your VM to the domain. And number one thing is important is you cannot have MFA on that account. It won't work. It just doesn't work. Trust me on that. And you have to have a contributor role or an owner to assign at the subscription level. And of course, the file service to hosting the host file and the software to install your custom images that your company have. So in short, to enable success, all the VM that you build in AVD must join to an AD domain in order for it to function well. And I'll go over the different option for the domain for AVD in a little bit right here. And of course for the, I'm sorry, the next question. The MFA thing, is it really required? Do check with your security team. MFA can cause a lot of headaches if you don't have the policy set correctly, because AVD currently do not support B2B. And if you have multiple security measures, great, but this is absolutely necessary if you're doing a POC and it's causing extra cycle for your team to troubleshoot. And I have a case where a customer, because of their security policy, they require a strong MFA with conditional access is totally not working for us, for the end user, and they ended up having to spin off a different environment to be able to test AVD because the MFA conditional access is not non-negotiable. So do check with your security team for that. So these are the 3 AVD identity options I mentioned earlier. So we got what? AD domain services. We have Azure AD domain services, and we have Azure AD. Those are the 3 option AVD identity options available. So for option 1, so what are the use case? When do you see when would you use ADDS? So the relevant use case for this type of Active Directory are merger, acquisition, company rebranding, or multiple on-premises identity, right? So what about Azure ADDS, which is domain services? So to extend your on-premises multi-forest ADDS identity to Azure without private connectivity, and also support legacy authentication like Kerberos, NTLM, and you do use Azure Active Directory domain services. And the use case here is applied to merger acquisitions, companies that are rebranding, and multiple on-premises identity requirements. And so when do we use option 3, the Azure AD? I'm not sure you familiar with Azure AD, but it's only in the cloud, right? It's not like your on-premises Active Directory. It's Azure AD. It's separate. It's a fully managed Active Directory. So for AVD that AD join, or VM that AD join, it's removed the need to have the line of sight from your VM to an on-premises DC, which is a domain controller. In some case, it removed the need for the DC entirely because it's fully managed, right? It simplifies your deployment and management of those environments. And these VM can also be automatically enrolled into Intune or SCCM, right? Does anyone here have question about ADDS? What are they, or Azure ADDS?
Yeah, what is Azure ADDS?
Sure. Thank you, Adam. Azure ADDS is Azure Active Directory Domain Services. It is provide and manage domain services with a subset of fully compatible traditional ADDS features like group policy, LDAP, Kerberos, and TLM authentication. It is integrated with Azure AD, and when synchronized with the on-premises ADDS environment, it allows you to extend your on-premises identity to run in Azure. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other?
Yes, I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
So when WVD first came out about 2 years ago, I think, when it first went GA, I deployed one of those for a client. At that time, it was called, I think now it's called Azure Virtual Desktop Classic. That was a day when you don't have a web-based portal to add users. You have to use PowerShell. So
yes.
And at that time, so we chose the second option, Azure ADDS. And just to supplement what you just described, the Azure ADDS is actually under the surface just a pair of virtual machines managed by Azure in the Azure network that's running the domain service. It's essentially a hosted domain controller for companies who don't have a domain controller on premises, or they don't want to use their existing domain controller on premises. So because it's Azure managed, you don't have total admin privilege on that domain controller. You are not the domain admin, but you do have the capability to configure it. Things like group policies, those things, for the most part, majority of the features that you can configure on an on-premises domain controller via those policies, you can do it in inside the ADDS, just with some restrictions, of course. So the situation back then was, with this client, for example, at that time, we already fully migrated to Azure AD. We don't have domain controllers anymore, right? And their on-premises workstations are purely Azure AD joined. So it's just the modern workspace technology Microsoft has, right? But they do need the virtual desktop, the multi-session desktop, to support a legacy application. So we deployed that Azure Virtual Desktop. At the time, there was no third option at all. So you have to have either your own domain controller or the Azure ADDS. So given that scenario, it's kind of going slightly backward, right? Because we just literally decommissioned all those domain controllers out of the client. Now we literally spin another managed instance, which works nicer. It doesn't have to maintain it. It's nice, but at the end of the day, it's still a domain controller, right? We still have domain policies and stuff. So how do we migrate this type of client to the third option? Is there a clear path? I mean, I know that we have to probably just tear down the existing classic deployment and redeploy a new one. But given the current situation with Azure Virtual Desktop, can those clients who have completely got rid of their existing domain controllers go without deploy the Azure Virtual Desktop without having to hear another word about domain controllers? Just pure Azure AD all the way?
We expect this question repeated verbatim, by the way.
Yeah, could you summarize that, Kim? Seriously, we couldn't hear it back here.
Yeah, maybe,
Summarize, Mike.
yeah, that was a long-winded question, but I'm sorry. So I lost bits and pieces of it. So I'm sorry, the gentleman name.
Mike, yeah, sorry, that is a long question. Yeah, I just, given some context, just basically because the Azure AD is Microsoft modern technology, right? This is where where the the modern workspaces are about. We try to, for every new small business client, you ask them to manage their workstations on premises. They will encourage you never to mess with their server or domain controller anymore. Just join it directly to Azure AD. We're just cloud only identity, right? But to support WVD, we had to deploy this Azure AD DS.
Right.
And because that's how the brokers and the Azure RD gateway work. They don't work without it. So my question is, has that situation entirely changed with the third option? Can we not have that, can we, so for this organization, for example, we deployed Azure ADDS just to support WVD. And now if you want to do a new deployment, do a migration, can we just get rid of that ADDS and just join that session host directly with Azure AD, and everything would just work?
Yeah, so the question is, can Mike get rid of Azure the domain controller, right?
The Azure ADDS, the second option that we deployed to support the classic deployment that was mandatory back then.
Okay, so can we get rid of the Azure ADDS and just use Azure AD? And this is AVD Classic, you say WVD Classic?
Yes. Is there a migration path on there from the classic to the current third option, which was added later, I believe, in the past year or so, sometime?
So is there a migration path from the classic to the current AVD by getting rid of Azure ADDS?
Yes.
That's my question. That's a great question. I haven't come across that situation. If you don't mind, can I get back with you on this?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I know this is one of the harder questions because I know the Azure Classic was back then it was very new, right? Not many companies adopted. I was one of the very early adopters, and nowadays anybody who's going to sign up right now will probably just make that choice from the very start, right? They would either go with option 1, 2, or 3. But I'm just a little curious. That setup is working beautifully, right? It works great. They have like Azure users in a couple session hosts and running the managed ADDS, which we don't have to patch or anything, and it's synchronized directly to Azure AD, which is great. But given the scenario, like now I see it, you have the third option, so I want to know if such a path exists. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you were to get rid of ADDS, is your organization don't have any legacy application that require NTLM or Kerberos?
No, the applications themselves do not require a domain controller. That's correct.
I see. Okay, so okay. I got to think about that. I don't know. But I certainly get back to you, Mike. If you can drop me like your contact
to
the chat, I would appreciate that. But that's a great question, Adam. You have any idea?
I do not.
Yeah, Adam don't have that either. Yeah. So basically, Mike was saying is that he have a classic WVD deployment, and he would like to get rid of domain controller and ADDS. He doesn't need any legacy applications. He want to just use Azure AD. Is there a migration path to that? I believe there is. I just don't know the details of it.
Yeah, the doc has a like the RDS host migration mapping.
Yeah, I think we can. Thank you, James. Sorry. Thank you, James. Yeah, can you post it in the chat if you join? Yeah. Yeah, on the team. Yeah. That's cool. So AVD network requirement and consideration. So if you don't have already ExpressRoute set up, I encourage you to get one. AVD or migration from on-prem to AVD. It does take a lot of bandwidth, but so ExpressRoute lets you extend your on-premises network into the Microsoft cloud over a private connection. with the help of a connectivity provider, right? So, so you have to have a VNet, and your AVD must be synced to the Azure AD to provide a hybrid identity if you have one. Like for instance, your corporate identity have to be synced to Azure in order to access AVD, right? So if in that situation, you are creating a common a user identity for authentication and authorization to all resources, regardless of your location. In this case, you are using hybrid identity. So the consideration here are express route, and you can also use site-to-site VPN as well for a dedicated, to secure your connection. But there's pros and cons for both. So with express route, you have a dedicated network through a service provider, and site-to-site VPN, you have a tiny little pipe there in compared to express route. So these are the very high level of requirement and consideration for your network. Earlier we talked about different words or different vocabulary like workspace, host pool, application group, and session host. So what are they? So the workspace is a logical grouping of the application group, right? So you have application, I'm going to use HR, accounting. So all of that application group, when you publish that, you group them together in a workspace and you assign it out to user. The host pool are a group of identical session hosts that serve up your session, serve a purpose. And the application group is also a logical group of a bunch of published application or a published desktop that you also assign to user. A session host is an underlying virtual machine that hosts your published desktop and application. So that's some of the main, very common word that AVD related you would be hearing. And some of these are logical limitation that I'd like to briefly share. It's not, you know, hugely important, but there are service limit to workspace, how many you can have. The host pool 400, the application group, you can have like 500. And the session host, you can have like a 10,000 session hosts.
5 other spaces right now, like GitHub workspaces, Azure DevOps workspaces, or
no, this is AVD. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, sure.
Very likely.
Quite an overload. Yes.
So I'd like to go into a demo real quick, if you guys don't mind, to showcase the deployment of Azure AVD, deployment of a host pool, load balancings, and then we're going to assign user to host pool. We're going to test it out and see how it's work. And then I'll show you the remote app streaming. And also the most important thing is, what something go wrong? How do I look into my AVD? How can I know what's going on? I can't connect. What are my error message? This is AVD. Where do I connect to get the message? So I'm going to stop that slideshow real quick and then share my other. Hey, come over. Can you see okay? Okay, cool. So, 1 second. So in AVD, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy a host pool. It take about 15 minutes. I'm going to deploy 1 machine. If you take 2 machines, it's going to take some time for the VM to spin up. You can do this through CLI or PowerShell. I'm using the GUI portal. So I'm just going to pick a resource group and I'm going to name it Baytown. and I like it to be in the East US. I'm not going to validate my environment. It's going to take forever. And the host pool type. So we got a personal or pool. A personal is dedicated and a pool is share. And if you want multi-session share, I would go with the pool. So the pool desktop is also known as a persistent desktop. And it's assigned user to whichever session host that is currently available, depending on the load balancing algorithm. So you can see here, you can have either breadth first or depth first, right? So with load balancing, what's the breadth first? Breadth first is the automatically assigned or the default configuration when you're deploying the session host in a host pool. So this method distributed the connection evenly to available session, max session limit. Like for instance, how many users can connect to the session, right? So this is done to control the maximum number of sessions allowed per session host in your AVD environment host pool. So what about depth first? When you use depth first load balancing algorithm, it first creates a session host that allow new connection. And then it select randomly from half of the session hosts, or whatever available in your host pool, with the least number of session, then it's assign your connection to it. So if you have 9 machines with 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way to 17, the 19th session, and the 19th session, right? So 11 to 19, a new session that you create will not automatically go to the first machine, but instead it go through all the it can go to any first fighter machine with the lowest number of sessions. So it check, the machine with the lowest number then is assigned. All right, so I'm going to just use the default breadth first, and then I like to have 2 or whatever number that you pick. So I'm gonna, in this case, I pick a 2, and then I'm gonna add the virtual machine right now because I would like to leverage that. I'm gonna pick I'm not gonna pick availability zone. I'm not paying for it. It's a demo. Sorry. Then the image, just pick. Sorry.
What is the available?
An availability zone is a data center that provide that hosts your infrastructure. So it's basically it's a data center located in different regions that your AVD is running on. Sorry, where were I? I lost that.
Separate building.
Yeah, it has.
And around there, you get 3. You get 3. Recommend 3, but 8.
We won't mention it. We don't talk about it. Have to.
Right.
Sorry, I lost the session, so I got to do it again.
So this machine got best logic, is that because of earlier configurations, or is it just kind of strong arming in good?
I'm sorry, James, can you say again?
Oh, one of your settings before it says this is set up with FS Logics. I'm
It's-
just guessing because you already had set something up with FS Logics.
No, I have not. I have to create a container. I have not done that. So I'm going to skip. I'm going to use a local profile. My profile going to be on a local disk. It's a process to set up the FX logic. It takes some time. It's a while.
Yeah, I was in that text field.
Yep. Sorry, why do I keep going here? Yeah, let me get back on here. Yeah, sorry. There you go. I'm going to pick a DS4. It's beefier, it's run faster.
PS5.
Oh,
I want some shiny.
yeah, yeah.
PS5.
And by the way, from my experience, the AMD EPYC basis, the AMD EPYC SKUs and the VMs, they work great for this. Those
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, like and they're I think they're bit cheaper than the Intel ones too. I've experimented with a few different SKUs in there to use them as the host. I found those AMD ones, they're great.
Awesome. Oh, by the way, so for this deployment, I don't have a a domain controller or anything, so I'm going to join directly to Azure Active Directory, so it's easier. I don't have to mess with the ADDS. I'm sorry. My comment was in regarding to the AMD, right, Mike?
Yes, when we were choosing the session host, there are many different SKUs in Azure VMs. There are tons of them, 4th, 5th generation. So I was just saying that from my experiment, I found that some of these AMD EPYC processor-based VMs, which is the later generations that became available I think a year ago. From it at first was some limited regions, but they pushed them out to more and more regions. Those AMD EPYCs, they were performing really great.
Might say AMD EPYC.
Oh, the new AMD.
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
That's great. Cheap.
Is it cheap? How much would it cost, Mike?
It's hard to say, but the Azure will basically the pricing depends on number of cores and the memory, right, and the IOPS. But when you compare some of the generations that because the EPYC processors are very new SKUs, if you compare that same one to the previous generation was mostly running Intel Skylakes, I think, some of the Intel Platinums, Xeon Platinums, the AMDs were better value. Lots of people don't bother because they deploy that virtual machine. They chose the SKU a long time ago and they just keep it there. They never really update it, right? When the new SKUs come out, Azure is not going to automatically just let you switch over. You have to go there and just play around yourself. Just for the folks out there who haven't done it in a while, you might want to check out some of the newer VM SKUs, which are really great.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. That is awesome. So what I'm doing is create a new workspace and then enable diagnostic setting. I typically enable that. You have to have an analytic workspace log analytic to be able to do this step. So
What is that?
it's a like a workspace that store all of your telemetries from anything from like Azure Monitor, from your VM machine, from all the services. It's like a storage that sucks in everything that telemetry related. I'm not going to archive to the storage account. Oh no, I'm sorry. Is my battery going down? 1 second. My bad. My battery is going down. Like 4.
Okay. Okay. There's one right here.
Oh, that's the one right there. Thanks, Adam.
You're welcome. Let me get this set up.
All right, we're in power. Sorry, that was my bad.
Saved it.
Before it shut down. There we go. Okay, sorry. So what did I miss? Okay, I'm gonna skip the tags and then okay, I missed something here, so let's check. Oh, sorry, I forgot to pick the image. So I'm gonna do 11 or 10 multi-session.
That old software? Come on.
All right. I heard objections. I love Windows 10. What's wrong with you guys?
Oh, yeah.
I want to do one.
Yeah, who would use Windows 10? Weirdos.
All right. Oh,
Oh, you're talking about.
yeah, Sean, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit down, Phuket.
Thomas, the speaker's son, is here critically helping us.
Yes, thank you
Yeah.
for the help, Sean.
And the greeter, all of you.
So I just deploy a host pool and it's going to take about 15 minutes. Meanwhile, I have other host pool that are already spin up and I would like to go ahead and, show you, pretend that our Baytown host pool has been provisioned, but typically you will see a default application group associated with the host pool get created. And then the workspace that we created earlier, right? So to be able to connect to the host pool, I have a remote desktop tool here that I download. And so provided I already have this VM already spin up, I have assigned user permission. First of all, you have to create an application group, right? So in this case, you see that I have downtown and H-Town remote app. So I create an application group. To create that, it's not hard. So you go here, click on create, you select a resource group, and then you can, with a pool host, you can create an application group type of remote app or desktop. But with a personal, you cannot do anything. You cannot have a remote apps. That's just how it works. It's by design. So I'm just gonna give
Katie. Yeah.
remote app. Okay, I'm just gonna. I don't have a host pool right yet, so I'm going to just create. Okay, so once I create an application group, inside the application group, you can assign application, right? So let's say right now I have Notepad or Paint, but if you have a custom application, let's say HR, that already come with your golden image, it is part of your build, right? And it's already set up. So I would pick the application. I'm going to pretend that this is a HR application. I pick access, but I'm going to pretend this is HR. And I pick that and I just save it. It will show up in here. Okay. So this is what H-Town remote apps. So I have a tool here. I'm going to refresh my assignment here. All right, where did I refresh them? I can subscribe to either the workspace, but since I already have it, I'm going to refresh that. Okay. There you go. Access showing up or HR app showing up. And this is called the app streaming. Instead of giving it the whole desktop, I can just go directly to this app. Yes, it is my own tenant, my own AD tenant that I created. Can you guys see okay? This is a bit, I'm going to move this out because this is the remote desktop client locally that I installed to my desktop. So the apps that I just launched, it's here. So I can save as, and then I can save it I can choose to save it locally, but because this particular workspace is not configured to see my local laptop drives, I'm not able to do that. I'm going to have to save it to the host that is hosting this particular workspace. But I'm going to hop onto another workspace. Yes,
Save profile if you have it set up.
I'm sorry.
Would this save the roaming profile if you have it set up? So if you have
No, the profile right now is locally. It's a local profile. It's stored on a D drive of the session host. And it's non-persistent. So for the roaming profile, you have to set up Azure file or the FX logics.
With that, even if for just opening the app with that, save it to your profile.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's-
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's correct. It would. It hasn't been set up. So earlier we on H-Town workspace. I'm going to try downtown workspace. You can see here, this is popping up, the credential. This is what it looked like. Okay. Oh my goodness, it's sharing both of my screen. Yay. Okay. So now I'll show you whether this particular workspace has access to my local drives. Yeah, it's too big, sorry. Come on. It does not have access to my local drives.
Click on this PC without here. Like, so,
Yeah, it does not. But in a nutshell, to be able to see the local drives, there's a setting that in the workspace that I can show you right now. In the host pool, I'm going to pick downtown. RD property. You can configure the session behaviors, reconnections, auto detects, drive redirections. You know, you can redirect the drive. Right now, as you can see here, don't redirect any drives. I would like to do that because I want to see my local drive, right? And then there's another display, the advanced setting here that you have to have, which is drive to redirect. And if you were to use a web client, this is another setting that you have to use to be able to connect from the web client. I'm going to save this. It takes a while for this setting to change, to take effect. That's what I meant. So I'm going to go to H-Town, RD property, display setting, drive redirects. Here, sorry. You can also, you know, redirect your microphone and audio and camera directions. I want to do that. And then that advanced setting, you can see here, these twos are here. So there's a typo in here. I'm going to remove the S. Save it. All right. So meanwhile, let us look at the scaling plan. So if you want your AVD to scale in certain hour, let's say 8 to 5, you have a peak hour that you need to scale the machine up, add more hosts to it. You can also enable the auto scale. Oh my goodness, what happened here? You have to set up an R bag, like a custom R bag, and then set up the auto scale. I thought I have it set up already. Sorry, I don't have that ready. And then under the property, you can also use the start VM on connect as best practices to save some costs, because your organization may have a run book that shut down VM after 5 and the user go home, but the next morning you're not going to be there to turn it on for them. So by checking start VM on connect, you essentially, as soon as the user connect, the VM it's turned on and it's hands off for you. It's easier to manage. So that's a cost saving there.
Does the user have a delay at first? Like, does he know that it's spending some time to boot up?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes. Does the user know there's a delay first? When they first come into the office, they're trying to connect. They're going to be a delay. The user going to have a little bit of a like a message popping up said the VM is initiating some of that nature. So yes, there will be delays. Yes, sir.
Is there a policy for disconnect? Like for shutdown and disconnect? That's what I'm used to.
Yes, there is a policy that you can configure as a, it depends on your organization, at a subscription level or at a root level for the entire organization or a certain tenant that you
Typically for a, like I said, I'm used to other VDI solutions.
Uh-huh.
It's usually have something for certain amount of time without doing something, the session disconnects, or if the user disconnects, the machine can be shut down after a certain amount of time.
Oh, like the GP edit where you go in there.
Yeah.
Some override behaviors.
Yeah.
Under the rules.
Oh, so that you
They
may-
have that, like, if you disconnect from the session should persist, it should shut down the machine after a certain amount of time. Is there a setting for that?
Not that I know of. I'll look it up, but I think there is at Halliburton, they have a policy at an organization level, at a root tenant, that they automatically log off user through a script that just kick them off. If you're not connecting and not doing anything for 30 minutes, we'll kicking you off. That's a policy, but I mean, that is enforced through a root policy.
Just group policy, right? The domain group policy.
Yes, a domain group policy, yeah. Okay, so that is some of the property for the session behavior, write direct and display settings. So we actually look at earlier we look at this the VM that are not I want to save to my local drive, right? So I couldn't save that earlier. Let's try. I just make some change. Let's see if it's actually show up or it's going to take a little while.
Just one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Suppose you have a thunderstorm going on outside.
Uh-huh.
And so the user's computer shuts down, comes back on. Is the entire session lost, or is there enough smarts between the server and the user's laptop to put the session back together?
That's a great question.
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it happened, right? I mean, and this is practical, right? You may lose like my power. I just I just lose power. I think the AVD broker will have to detect the host that it was on, and if it's saturated with, it's full at capacity, then it moves you to a different host. Like in my host, I have 2 hosts. If the first host maxes out 2, and it's completely full, it's gonna connect you to the previous. But if you wanted to have the same session again, I would personally recommend the personal desktop type, not the pool, but the personal persist AVD, because it's dedicated to you. And all the apps are on there, and because it's so dedicated to you, there's no need to stream an apps just for you. You already have the whole machine, right? So, well, it didn't work. Sorry, guys, it didn't work yet. So it's gonna take some time.
Would it be fair to say that if I just hard close out of a window, that doesn't necessarily close my session?
It does not. It disconnected.
If I'm disconnected, it's not the session still active though in the session host.
Yes. Here.
That's typical with RDS. So if I were to reconnect, it would just end to the same session as long as the session's still alive.
How long does the session stay?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But here we can take a look at it. So here we can look at it right now. So I went to the like for us like an admin, right? But your day-to-day job is to look at AVD user complaint. Hey, I can't connect or whatever. What happened? So this is Baytown. I don't want to Baytown. This is new. So I want to go to downtown. Right? Just connect from downtown. So right now you can see it give you a high level of the type of the configuration, right? Max session is 2, right? And it's still pulling up data. Sorry, guys. So all of this telemetry is pulling from the log analytic workspace that we configured earlier. It's dumped there, so now it's pulling it. Give it a minute. There you go. Why is my screen so big? I want it a little smaller. So it gives you the host performance matrix. And then if you have a connection issue, you can see that here as well. Oh my goodness, so slow. I'm not sure what's going on. But meanwhile, I can do a different view here on the host pool. So in H-Town, you can see how many is actually connects going through the session host, right? So you can see here the active session is 1, right? And if I drill down a little further, I can see the user who is connected. This particular user is disconnected. But how long is the session hanging around? I don't know yet. It's a great question.
By default, it never logs off. It will just remain disconnected until you set that policy to expire a session after a certain time. And I strongly recommend you do, because what's going to happen is that in majority of the cases that you just mentioned, like the user support, right? So from an administrator point of view, from my experience, the most common type of support you're going to get from your user when using this technology is when occasionally their program will get stuck. Some program freezes and some desktop hangs, and it's worse if you're using remote app streaming because they don't have a desktop to work with. Even if that one particular program freezes, they don't have a log off button inside the session to unlock themselves, and they will try to restart their local computer, which doesn't help because the session is on the server.
I've done that myself.
So what's going to happen is that you should educate your user. First of all, when this happens, restarting locally doesn't help. What can help is you don't try to reconnect again and again, because it's not going to do anything, because you just reconnect to a frozen session, right? And then you set that policy to let the session expire after 15 minutes. And hopefully you can tell the user, if you can't get tech support within 15 minutes, don't do anything, disconnect, remain disconnected, wait it out, and you can reconnect. And another little tip is that I usually deploy a logoff.exe as a remote app on there. So the user going to see that logoff.exe as one of the app. When they click that, and hopefully it's not frozen too much to the extent that even that doesn't run. So when it does run, it will log them off immediately so they can reconnect.
Absolutely. So which explain why in this case Halliburton had a policy just lock them off after 30 minutes. That's very lenient. I would say 15 minutes is better, but absolutely, I've jinxed myself a couple of times by keep logging on with different remote apps, and it's stuck. When I disconnect, I don't sign off. I just disconnect, and that's the exact behavior you described. So, All right, so as an admin that's come up, that's awesome. So we have, user complain, I can't log in or my session's stuck. What's going on? So AVD Insight gives you this window into like a little information dashboard here that you can leverage to look at different configuration, the CPU utilization, the disk space, and the error message that you actually get. In this case, you have an application and a system here. And if you wanted to look further down, drill down, oh my God, it's so slow. But anyhow, so you see here, there are errors here. So let's click on here a little bit. So it's telling us on the 27, there's some update happening, right? Window update, window failed to install this update with these errors. So these are the little things that help you to troubleshoot, to try to understand what is going on and why, right? And then you can schedule your run book to have an action or some logic, some Azure function to go do a thing, maybe log off or fix something that you think appropriate. So this is in a nutshell. Instead of VM Insight more like for the host pool, like the hosting host. VM Insight give you the AVD Insight. And quite often I have profiles that are corrupted, so I actually log onto the host itself and then delete the profile and then it work again. So in a nutshell, so we try through locally remote desktop client tool. We were able to stream the apps. We pretend access is HR apps, and we actually launched Notepad. And we also launched the session host like a window, right? So we've done that. What about web client? Have we tried that? Do you guys want to see that too? So I'm having a browser instead of a client tool. Sorry, where's my AVD? There. All right, so I'm logging through a web HTML, HTTPS, yeah. It's just a web, regular web, HTML, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Why is it so huge? I don't understand it.
Dots, top right. Very, very top right. Okay. Those dots. Very right.
See, am I right? All right, shrink it.
Very top. There you go.
This one?
To the right,
You did Control Shift minus.
It won't work.
Three dots to the right.
You mean this one?
Those dots.
All right, so zoom.
Yeah.
Okay, much better. So huge. Much better. Okay. Sorry, guys. Giving me headaches. So again, I mean, you can, launch your whatever, Paint, I guess. Pretend it's an HR apps. You can do your normal on your window. So we can connect through web. And then what else that we wanted to do? That's pretty much it in terms of AVD. You can access through the GUI or through the web. Anything else? I'm sorry?
Still WBD.
It is. It is just rebrand with better features. You do, yes. So a couple of limitations. I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, I'm running out of time, right? How are we doing on time? Almost done. So AVD does not support B2B. We're working on it. A lot of feature requests. The Microsoft team, product team is working diligently towards that. So 400 host pool per session limit. And I think we went over that earlier. So I'm going to quickly breeze through this. Oh my goodness, what happened? Okay, sorry. Okay, so to get around subscription limit, there are certain subscription limit that you will actually hit because your organization is requiring more than 5,000 VM. In this case, get another subscription. And then do leverage hub and spoke architecture to be able to get around the subscription limit. And then with research, we suggest that you deploy your session host in a separate resource group. Why? Because this leaves you in a better position to remove all your virtual machine all at once in case of an update or, window update happen all the time, right? So you might want to do that. So this very, very basic high level subscription limit. Best practices, security wise, I mean, we do require an MFA. In this case, you got to check with your security. Is that necessary? So MFA require knowledge, right? Knowledge is something that only you know. And the possession of something that you have, like a phone, something inherent to you. And also with MFA, you will run to condition. You have to have conditional access to be able to enforce MFA. And then you have to collect log, audit log through like Azure activity logs, ADA log, session host log, and different other log like key vault logs. And we do recommend to use remote apps instead of giving the entire, session host to your user. And then do leverage Defender for the cloud. And if Microsoft Defender for endpoint, antivirus, threat protections, and vulnerability management. And also VTMP. Anybody know what is VTMP?
Virtual TPM.
The Windows 11 security thing.
Yeah, it's a virtual version of a hardware trusted platform. So basically, it does have a BitLocker on your disk in a full volume encryption. So that is a VTPM. So just some of the best practice. So I think we reached the end. But some of the tips and tricks here are, anybody have experience with RDP short path or run into it or know what it is? Nope. So RDP short path is recommended that you for reliability and consistency. So the key benefit of short path is you leveraging the RDP multi-transport capability. It doesn't replace the reverse connect transport, but it complements it. So how does it all works? RDP short path is based on the UDP protocol. So it's established direct connectivity between the remote desktop client and the session host. The direct connectivity reduces dependency on the Azure Virtual Desktop Gateway, and it improves the connection reliability and increases the bandwidth for each of the user sessions. So in this case, performance is better, smoother. You don't have frequent disconnects and delays. So it's removed the extra delays and reduce the round trip time and improve your user experience, especially for the sensitive latency sensitive application, you might want to use UDP short path. I couldn't demonstrate here because I haven't have a chance to do that, but and the VM, the earlier we picked a different size, right, or the different type. So why is it that we should have more than 2 core and not more than 30 core? So if you deploy machine that are less than 2 core, your performance is terrible. It's just not going to function. I did that myself. I was cheaping out, and it's just terrible. So so the reason behind this is Windows 10 component rely on using at least 2 parallel threads for some of the heavier app operation, right? So having multiple user on a 2-core VM will lead to your UI and your app becoming unstable and lower the number of core that support your multi-user VM can share out. So why is that you could not have more than 32 core? So as the number of cores increases, the system synchronization overhead also increases. For most of the workload at around 16 core, the return on the investment get lower, with most of the extra capacity being offset by synchronization overhead. It is likely that you get more capacity from 2 of the 16 core as opposed to 1 of 32. So don't get a big, ginormous core 32. Just get 2 of those. You're in a better shape. So the recommended range that Microsoft recommend is between 4 core to 24 core. It would provide you a better capacity. And then what else? A setup start on VM to connect to reduce the cost. I know that it's time, so I'm gonna skip some of these and go directly to the end very soon. So bear with me. Just to save you some cost there and some time. Sometime we talked about that earlier, so I can skip that. So you can only configure the start on VM on connect on the existing host pool. You cannot enable it at the same time you create a new host pool. So after you create the host pool, then you can configure that. So earlier I promised you about the differences between cloud PC or W365 versus AVD. So what is the right solution for your company, right? So here is the quick slide. So with Windows 365 or Cloud PC, it's a hands up. It's fully managed, right? It's complete end-to-end service, a one-stop. It's predictable user pricing. The caveat to that is you cannot turn off and on your PC for cost management, for cost saving, right? In the reverse, AVD allow you to do that. And the only none of the differences are the remote app streaming. You cannot stream apps remotely with Cloud PC or Windows 365. AVD gives you that capabilities. And then AVD have allow you to do multi-session desktop. By the way, it's against Microsoft licensing agreement for you to have multi-session desktop on-prem. Is only work on Azure. If you happen to have one on-prem, it's against the agreement. So they don't give it out, period. It's only work for Azure and within Microsoft. AVD, it have flexible consumption pricing. You have control over your sessions and you shut it down when you want it. And do be careful there. If you shut it down, your underlying host, your resources free up and allow other users to come in and take that. So don't be surprised the next morning you come in and the capacity is reached and you cannot start your VM. It happened. Data center capacity happened at capacity. So that's one of the difference. And so management implication. Let's give you a very high level of the control plane and the user profile. So with Windows 365, you can you don't use the FX logic because your profile is local, dedicated to your machine, your Windows 365. So I don't need to read this to you, but take a minute to look at, basically AVD need an admin, an Azure admin who's savvy at Azure to be able to set up the host pool, manage the host pool, VM, troubleshoot. But Windows 365 is hands-off, it's fully managed. If you want an easy going solution, I would go with 365. There's pros and cons for both. There's no right or wrong answer. Just pick the one that is appropriate to your enterprise. All right. So anything else? Sorry. There is a tool for the AVD optimization. I can share the link here. I think Adam, I'm going to share the slide deck.
Yeah, we'll put it on Meetup.
Yeah, well, we're going to put up the slide deck on the Meetup, and you guys can download to get all the links. And also these are the Q&A. So if you have any other questions, let us know. But anybody use Profile Container and or Office Container, Mike? It seems like you're very pro.
No, we don't use. I just use the FS Logic container. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, by the way, the Windows 365, I've seen some benchmark. It looks pretty fast in terms of the disk I/O access. So that's one of the performance considerations between these two comparisons. Is that I think if you provision the VM, depending on the particular VM you get and the disk size and the SSDs and stuff, right? You don't necessarily get the greatest performance per user because it's a RDP kind of a share kind of setup. The performance of the application it's for the most part, from my experience, okay, but it doesn't quite match, let's say, a local workstation with SSD in most cases, right? You don't get that experience. Where I think with the Windows 365, it seems to be faster from what I see. It's just because I think that drive will benchmark like 200 megabytes per second or so, read or write.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that.
Dedicated to you makes sense. It's just a bit faster in most cases, unless you provision a very high-end host pool with a very, very high OPS disk, which will cost you, right? So.
Right, absolutely. So talking about that, so appropriate VM sizing, you need to look at, what's the right VM, the sizing, because look at the cost. I mean, the more core you provision, the more expensive it is. Do you really need it? And also look at different machine type, GPU, graphic, whether it's high performance computing. You don't want it to pick the wrong size and only to hit a big bill later. So do appropriate sizing and perform and tune your VM once you set it up. Like don't enable virus scanning on your C drive and in the middle of the day when users are actually using it. So the little thing like that would help to manage your environment properly.
Yeah, the optimization is a key for sure. There are some programs to watch out for, like Google Chrome is a offender. When it does that, update thing, and it kind of slows down everybody. And so there's lots of little things that you got to watch out, especially those programs that tend to run inside every user's single session. And those constant scannings and updates and those things will add up for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this said don't go over 32, but I'm pretty sure Mega Godzilla had 448 cores that Mark Russinovich showed at Big Bang. Yeah, Notepad.
Yeah,
He broke down those.
Yeah, the M2 VM. Monster V2 has 448 cores.
Your Procky XP couldn't even measure it. You had to open Task Manager.
Yeah, it's a monster. Designed for SAP workloads, of course, not Notepad.
But it screams on there.
That's a little expensive. Yeah, but yeah.
So in short, I mean, for companies that have a product, I'll just pick Chevron. They have application that other companies use, like Shell or Halliburton or Schlumberger, because they are oil and gas, and they are out in the field extracting fracking, right? So other company have business with them, and of course they don't want to give them a laptop or, for that matter, the whole desktop. They just want to stream out apps, and the end user actually go out there and connect with their own AD tenant, with their own identity, and just access the apps, and business goes on as usual. So it's very cost effective, and that's why there's a huge interest in AVD over the cloud PC.
Yeah, it cuts through a lot of networking concerns. Like, we have a desktop app that needs a Mac drive to like access. I don't know if it still does, but they're thinking about firewall rules. How do we get them into our network? And like, or you just publish the remote app and you know,
Exactly.
you're all the software and the data set is close together, even though you're far away.
Correct.
The last thing you want to do is put the client halfway across the world and have to connect to the data set.
Yep, absolutely. I'm sorry.
And
Behind
I
me
know
is
you.
really.
Sorry.
Is the blinds bothering you? That's my fault.
No, it's okay. I'm okay. It doesn't bother me, but I think people on team will probably see a black spot
Yes,
instead of.
you are back.
Sorry, I'll take responsibility.
No, it's good. No, I enjoyed it. That's good. But so, is there any other question, discussion that you guys want to see? Any more demo?
Yeah. Now's your chance.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned earlier, we've got different methods. You can do the managed domain controller and Azure AD. Could you do both simultaneously in different subscriptions? Did you have one host just with Azure AD joined and the other joined to the managed domain controller?
So are you having one tenant or two different tenants?
It's just kind of like a hypothetical, like it's one tenant, but could you Azure AD join? I don't know if you can Azure AD join it if you already have the existing managed domain controller, but could you do both like on two separate subscriptions?
So you want to combine Azure Active Directory domain services and traditional domain services, or Azure Directory services and Azure AD?
It would be both. Like, let's say hypothetically, they've already got Azure AD and then they have the managed domain controller, the AADDS.
Yeah.
Let's say one subscription, you've got BDI where it's Azure AD joined, and then the other one you have joined to the managed domain controller. I don't know if that's possible or if you can only do the join to the managed domain controller.
If you're on a network, you can see the domain controller. I mean,
Yeah.
you can join it.
Yeah, the fact they're on different subscriptions is just a logical billing thing. Yeah, you'd have them in a different spokes off of your hub.
Yeah.
In different subscriptions,
Yeah.
like Kim was saying, because of subscription limits, really, number of VMs you can have, things like that. But yeah, like James was saying, they can all see one another, everything can see one another, even if they're in different subscriptions. So you could do that. The question would be, why would you want to do that?
If you were trying to move away completely from domain controllers, maybe transition over to Azure AD only.
Practically, so you'd have you'd have a sandbox spoke, for example. That's a
Yeah.
common pattern we recommend. One of the spokes is a sandbox in a sandbox subscription with less governance upon it. So that you could do that. That's how you might want
I
to.
didn't know if it would work on the same tenant or not.
You have a Dell on that, yeah.
I think that tech hypothetically can work. And another thing I've seen one company do is that they're running a.
Sorry, one sec, Bill.
Sorry.
Mike was just.
Sorry, Mike, can you say it again?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, I've seen one company do a sort of
Yeah.
unsupported kind of a setup where they actually VPN into that Azure AD domain service and literally just using that my Azure managed domain controller in the cloud and tearing down their local ones. It's not a supported scenario by Azure, but I think technically it can be done. I've seen it.
Mike says he thinks it might be possible. Thanks, Mike.
But thanks, Mike. I haven't seen that, but yeah,
Okay.
I would love to try that out.
Yeah. Try it out and let us know. I mean, we all learn something. Sorry, Bill, you had a
Oh,
question?
no problem. If you have a group of users who are doing different things at different times with different loads on their computers, do you have something like that will do optimization on the fly based upon the resources that are needed? Or is that going to be something that the IT department needs to be watching and say, okay, we'll allocate you this for this amount of time?
That will be the host pool skill set that I was sharing you earlier. If it's,
I'm sorry.
that will be the host pool skill set. It has an increment of, let's say the CPU utilization is, let's say 80%. It would automatically scale up the number of session hosts, or scale up CPU and also scale out the number of hosts to accommodate incoming connection.
So you can address it.
Yes, you can address that.
Caveat that it's not gonna like kick you off your session and move you to another host if some guy just, you know, goes nuts and runs like that CPU test, load test or something on the computer. That host is down, you gotta get out of there and go to the next one.
Well, you don't want a greedy user also saying, hey, I'm more important than everybody else. I want 64 cores or whatever. And all of a sudden you've got this huge bill coming in.
Well, one of the solution is go with personal AVD pool type instead of a
Right.
share. I mean, if you know that you are a graphic designer and you got CAD, right, AutoCAD running high, or you are a gamer like my son, get a NVIDIA, a beefy one dedicated to yourself. But I mean, of course, the cost implications. So instead of sharing, just get yourself dedicated, persist profile, stay with you, your settings stay with you. But I mean, for a share, for cost saving, personal, with not a good one. The pool, multi-session pool desktop would be a better cost.
Also, the shared ones, they're not, the 64 core that you mentioned, unless the node pool's been configured for that size virtual machine set, you can't have that.
Right, I
You
was
can-
just pulling a number out of the air.
Oh, well, yeah, whatever you would like, yeah, you can't have that because it's been configured for you, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I want 64. Well, you can't have that. You can have what everyone else has, unless, like Kim was saying, I want something special, in which case you have to request it and then be put on it. So the greedy user problem, yeah, they have to be granted permission, if you will. So that's going to be a known, managed, and governed process.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I saw something on one slide that said Citrix and VMware support.
Yes.
So what is that? What support is that? Actually,
So AVD is also have support another layer on top of AVD like Citrix. So on premises, most folk have Citrix or VMware look and feel console to it, right? And you can organize and manage your VDI in one spot. And Azure AVD have another layers of Citrix that would incorporate Citrix look and feels in AVD, that you can manage your AVD in Azure with the looks and feel like Citrix and VMware.
Oh, so you can manage AV like a Horizon console, Citrix console. I'm kind of.
I believe so. I haven't done that myself, but I believe that's what I read. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can manage look and feel just like Citrix, but it's really you running AVD underneath that. Yeah. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I have not. I'm not a Citrix admin, but that's what I've read. Yeah.
Like you said, I'm curious from the situation if you're up for and you're thinking about doing AV, you want to make a migration or something like that. Get a POC up and you want to do a migration, would that make sense in that case?
I mean,
They might.
it might in terms of cost saving, but if you like, I'm a creature of habit. I like certain GUI and I know where things are. Citrix provide that tool for you as an additional wrapper around AVD instead of, Azure GUI. Citrix provide that for you. Look and feel the same, but literally you manage AVD underneath that.
It's like Cosmos. For API or SQL API. And
Oh,
shit.
yes.
It's just so they can get the different developers working.
Yeah, Postgres API.
And they're like, well, here you go, have this one then.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just gremlin. Oh, no, I don't want the other one.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's the chicken. This is.
But I heard CosmoDB now advertising that they have transactional capabilities. I'm wondering. I mean, CosmoDB is NoSQL, right? So I'm interested to know what that is. What is considered transactional in a relational term, because CosmoDB is not relational, right? From what I learned.
Transaction or something, if I had to guess about.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a lot of new things.
I just use tables. I don't use Cosmo very.
Yeah,
It gets
Much cheaper.
a lot cheaper. Yeah. Yeah, you're a smart man. But there's a limit to the table storage, right?
It's usually but not very, like, I don't write the front end stuff.
Oh, I see.
Like my P&L logs, like if I go in and query the size of SQL tables and things like that, and then I need to stash it month to month to show growth trends and.
That works. That works. Yeah. Cool.
And I know
Thank
you
you all.
struggled to get that, redirection work earlier, but I just want to say that we don't lose anything because that thing doesn't work very well from my experience, because it's pretty slow and laggy, the redirected drive when the user access it, and they will save it to the wrong place all the time. So it really, yeah, I think we got to, whoever does this, they should strongly consider using the Azure files. Give them that familiar D drive, E drive inside there, so they can't possibly mess up. Where is local, where is remote, and things like that. Yeah.
I agree.
Using Azure files or Azure NetApp
Yeah,
files.
it's probably slow because the person has like low upload speed or something.
Yeah, because it's over the WAN, right? You're doing essentially SMB over the WAN, so that cannot be a very pleasant experience on the
Right.
high transactional files.
Any more questions? We got everyone answered. In which case we can we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, Kim.
Thank
Really
you very much,
appreciate
y'all,
it.
for having me. Thank you.
Also, thank you to Sean for being our greeter today, Kim's son. Thank you, excellent job. Thanks also to all of you for coming out. It's great to see everyone, get some in-person time. I hope everyone, we have a speaker planned next month. We're going to have a member of the community speaking, which is also one of my absolute favorite types of topic, speaking about some experience that they've had actually standing up and deploying actually Oracle connectivity. So Oracle has managed connectivity to their databases in their data centers via Azure. So you can run applications in Azure and connect them to Oracle infrastructure managed by Oracle. So they're going to talk through that. They've actually done it, and they're going to talk about all of that. So that one should be a good one. Next month, that's going to be August, and then September, the speakers in the room.
All right.
Really looking forward to hearing about James's experiences of some kind, whatever.
We were talking about, we had a US only based software, and then we had to overnight, it was like, all right, now it's gonna be a global software.
Oh, wow.
And by the way, if it's in this country, it has to stay in this country.
So some lessons learned, some bruises gained, so
It's
that's going to be a good one too.
It's only Saudi Arabia with the data sovereignty. It's stay where it is.
Lots of challenges. So that will be good. Look forward to that.
Over 20 different types of software to think about code changes. If I had to change all the URLs and redirects, data sorted.
Right, so that'll be good. So I hope to see some of you, all of you, back for that. We'll be back here next month and then after that. So thanks everyone for coming out. See you again soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, guys.
Please.